So the book. Okay, this is, I don't even know if I should ask you this, but I have to. Which was more difficult, giving birth to your daughter or creating this book?
You know, it's tough to say because I would say that the baby is more of a really focused effort for a short span of time. And the book is sort of like a really drawn out pain that lasts, weeks, months at a time. So it's a different kind of struggle.
Well, exactly. I mean, listeners, do you like writing or do you go, oh God, every time I write, it's kind of painful? Well, to write a book is that pain every day for at least 3 months if you're fast, 6 if you're reasonable, a year if you're finally at the point where your publisher, if you're not self-publishing, is going to go, come on, okay, we kind of need the book now.
Time's up.
Yeah, exactly. So can you talk to us about the process? Well, first, give us a capsule summary of the book, its title, and what it's about.
So the book is called The Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas. And it's a book for marketers and creators, anyone who is sort of tasked with coming up with content ideas. So podcasters, bloggers, content marketers, you name it. If you have to come up with content ideas, this is the book for you. And the logic behind the book is I actually wanted to take the framework and the process and system that I use when I'm doing consulting, when I'm running workshops, when I'm speaking and doing keynotes. I wanted to put that into a book so that other people could take that framework and apply it to their own content. Obviously, I can only speak on so many stages, can only talk to so many people. So my hope is that the book allows me to help people who might not get a chance to get in the room with me or get to work directly with me one-on-one. So it was really exciting to kind of put together. But the first challenge I had was actually turning that process that happens automatically inside of my head, sort of finding a way to articulate that, because that's really where it was born, is people would say, well, how do you come up with these ideas? How do you do this? And it was almost instinct. I don't know how I do it. I really had to put a lot of focused thought time into figuring out what's the process? What are the steps that are going on inside my head? Once I kind of got that out on a whiteboard, it was my big light bulb moment of like, this is it. This is what I do. And now that I can articulate it, I can actually teach it to other people instead of just doing it for them. So that was sort of the biggest aha moment, was kind of coming up with that framework, being able to put it down on paper, get it out of my head and onto paper. The rest of it was a lot of what we just talked about, a lot of stressful, focused, forced writing sessions. I am a writer at heart. I'm a former journalist, so I love writing. I'm blessed to be a very speedy writer, but a surefire way to make something you love miserable is to put a minimum on it and a time deadline and say you must do a tremendous amount of this thing that you love in a very structured way by this deadline. It certainly takes some of the love out of it and turns it into work for sure. So the only thing that worked to my advantage is that I knew I had a baby that was coming in August or about August, and I needed to get this thing done before she was here. So my progress was certainly lopsided and got a lot of that done right before she was born. I did have stressful nightmares of being in the hospital in the labor ward with my laptop, trying to finish the book. Thankfully, it didn't come to life, but I
would
had
hope
legitimate
not.
nightmares.
And if you need to know if you have a beautiful baby in the form of a book, let's take a look at what Ann Handley, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and chief content officer at Marketing Profs, what she had to say about the book is, marketing doesn't need another content marketing book, but we do need a practical, accessible, ridiculously useful guide to reimagining our great ideas in 100 different ways, literally. The Content Fuel framework should come packaged with every 2020 marketing plan. Highly recommended. Wow. And that's coming from the queen.
I know. How lucky am I?
From the queen of content marketing, Ann Handley, who I believe she was the first person inducted into the Content Marketing Hall of Fame.
No big deal.
Yeah. Wow. That's a pretty big endorsement.
It definitely is. Honored.
I can talk about that framework. And again, those who've listened to the previous episodes where Melanie's been on, we gave a little talk through that framework in previous episodes. But this book actually puts it down on paper in a way that you can sit there and highlight, dog ear pages, use little flags and stuff to highlight the best stuff that you want to remember and do every day. Because again, and I think you're a big proponent of this, it's not that you have to do it all every day. You have to do perhaps one thing that is strategically sound every day. And this framework is actually built around that idea, right? I can literally roll a dice and come up, or twice, right? I have to roll that dice twice. Mm-hmm. And then I pick a focus and what's the other word? Format.
Yep. So the focus is sort of the lens through which you're going to present that information. How are we going to tell the story? And then the format is how do we bring it to life? Audio, video, something else.
Okay, so let's just, last episode we talked about an iron foundry. I like to pick kind of what people would think of as, how can that be interesting industries?
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, doing cool social media or content creation for a fashion company ain't too hard. But here in Wisconsin, there's a foundry that if you look down at all the manhole covers around the country, they come from Wisconsin for the most part. If you're working for that foundry, how am I supposed to create compelling marketing as a marketing director, marketing manager, marketing coordinator for this iron foundry? How can your framework help me?
So the first thing that my mind went to is, and again, thankfully this framework puts my mental process down on paper for you to sort of replicate. When you talked about these manhole covers being in cities around the country, the first thing I wanted to know is what's the numbers behind that? So if you were using the framework, you'd find that one of the focuses is data. So the idea is to look at a story through the lens of numbers. So the question I would talk to the folks there and I would say, let's look at the numbers. What states have we sold to, right? How many different states are our manhole covers in? Which state has the most of our covers, right? What is the highest concentration? Is there a particular city maybe that has more than any other city? Are there states where we don't have any? What's the farthest one of our manhole covers has traveled in miles to get from our foundry to where it now lives, right? What's the oldest, the youngest? How many total have we created this year in our life? I would look through all those sort of numerical data points, and then I would be looking to say, well, which of the formats is probably the best way to present this? I think you could do it in a number of ways. You could certainly just sort of write out all of these fact points as different facts that are about the company. My suggestion would be this would make a really cool infographic. I would love to see, or a map even, that shows all of these different data points plotted on a map of the United States. And you can zoom into the different states and see how many cities, carry those same manhole covers, how many are in each. I see it as a really rich interactive infographic opportunity. But again, could be something as simple as just a blog post with some bullet pointed written facts. It doesn't have to be super complicated. But yeah, this framework will walk you through it serves really to be a prompt to say, could I tell this story through data? Could I tell this story through my opinion? Could I tell this story through history? I would love to hear the history. How did they become the go-to creator of manhole covers? How do you even become such a thing, right? Who even thought about that process? You don't pay much attention to it. What about the history of the design? Has that design changed, or is it the same manhole cover they're making now that they were making 30, 50, 80 years ago? So, you go through each of those focuses as prompts, and then you think about the different formats. How do we tell this story through writing, through an infographic, through audio, video, an image gallery, a quiz, a map, right? There's so many different ways to bring those stories to life. And I think the real fun part to me is experimenting and seeing, just asking the question, can I tell the story in this way? Sometimes the answer might be no, because of your resources or the time you have, the other resources at your disposal. But just to ask the question, to consider the different ways you could tell it would really open up your mind to so many different possibilities and allow you to see how those might fit into your strategy. I'm
just sitting here going, oh my God, you started saying some things that triggered thoughts in my mind, like, oh, wouldn't this be cool if we did a user-generated content thing where we invite people to go out in the street in front of their yards and take a picture of it, tell us where it's from, and we're going to have a little gift giveaway or something, and then turn that into a map. Exactly. And then it's this constantly updating thing. And then you can make an image gallery. Here's the different designs we have in each particular state. You could make 50 image galleries, one for each state. Well, and the whole thing is I can see someone grabbing this and going with it so that all of a sudden it's not just a manhole cover, but somebody with a Etsy crafting spirit decides to adopt that manhole and create this little diorama. And then you've got people competing with manhole covers that are painted or cool, It could blow up in a huge, socially fun way based on your boring metal product that you think no one could possibly be interested in. This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by Nonfiction Brandversity. It's a free Facebook group dedicated to the art and craft of personal branding, and we'd like to invite you
Just search Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook and ask to join. You're in, guaranteed. I can't wait to see you on campus.
And the other thing is, like, all of the ideas we just came up with were only about the manhole cover itself, right? That's really a product focused piece of content. But the first focus that I love to look at is people. So I want to talk to the blacksmith who's been working at this foundry for 30 years, who can talk to me about what does it take to become a blacksmith? I don't even know, right? I would like to watch the process. Let's do process focused content to see how that manhole cover gets made. Let's talk about opinion about why, about why those manhole covers are even important, right? I actually can't answer that question. Why can't they just pave it, right? They have to get down there, I guess, right? So there's so many different ways to tell the story that don't even have to be about the manhole cover itself.
Exactly. Your prosaic product actually has a lot of poetry built right into it. It's really a question of discovering it. And what I really like about your framework is it gives you the framework, literally, to find that poetry. So you've talked about focuses, and I see in the book that there are 10. And by the way, thank you very much for sending me the kind of pre-release PDF of the book, because I get a sneak peek at it, and I'm really excited about it. Anybody
You're
who has
one of the first to read it.
Woot woot. And I'm not going to say anything about anything I find, unless I make it. I kind of get picky about Oxford commas because I actually like them.
Oh, I know. This was a debate, believe it or not. I have the copy here that we're going through the final edits, and there's a lot of comma talk.
Yeah, I have no doubt. But anyway, the framework allows you to look at hey, it's boring to me because I look at it every day, and forces you out of your kind of preconceived notions and into all the possibilities. So you've talked about some of the focuses, whether it's history or people, et cetera. The other part, and there are 10 focuses in the book, correct?
Yep.
The other part are 10 formats. How do you define a format?
So a format, there's a lot of different ways we use format in other contexts, but for the purposes of content creators, the format is the way in which you bring your content idea to life, right? So we had our example of, we want to find the data of all these manhole covers throughout the country. Well, that could just be a list, right? It could just be a written list of here's where every manhole cover is located. That's probably not the most approachable piece of content. I don't know who wants to read that entire list. We mentioned an infographic. We could do that. Audio is another way to do it. We can have sort of a podcast style interview where we talk to the Department of Transportation, maybe. I don't know who's in charge of manhole covers. Talk to the person from each state and get some of those data points. Could make a video where you kind of go and see some of these manhole covers in all the different places. An image gallery we mentioned where you could do photos of each of these and have people click through. The other options I talk about in the book would be a timeline. So plotting things, in a chronological order through time. A quiz. Maybe we test people's manhole cover knowledge. I don't know how deep that well goes for most people, but there's probably some value there in testing out manhole cover knowledge in a quiz. You could create a tool. Maybe it's like a manhole cover locator. You could type in your zip code and it tells you the nearest one from our company. And then a map was the other one we mentioned. And the thing I mentioned in the book is I want to make it clear that these are not the only 10 focuses and the only 10 formats you can use. There are certainly other, you could make virtual reality, augmented reality, you could create a course, a video game. There's plenty of other ways to create, put your ideas out into the world. But I wanted to give 10 focuses and 10 formats to start because it seemed like a good number, a good starting point that feels approachable, right? But also gives you the possible combination of, if you combine each of these, you end up with 100, which feels like a really good place to start if you're having to come up with a content strategy or a full year's worth of content.
Well, yeah. And for people who have to create content, it's like, God, do I have to do a 500 to 1,000 word blog post every time I post? No, you don't. You could do a historical quiz about your company. Guess when the manhole was invented? Throw in some dates and then report back on what people vote on. Here's the thing. If you ask someone's opinion or what they think about something, not everyone's going to answer, but a lot are. And that's the information you can play back to your audiences. This framework is really, I think, powerful. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. Joe Lazauskas, I think that's how you say his name. VP of Marketing. VP of Marketing at Contently and author of The Storytelling Edge says, Melanie is a pioneer in content marketing and one of the smartest minds in the game. While so many content strategy frameworks are obtuse hieroglyphics with 47 different boxes and arrows pointing at each other, The Content Fuel framework is simple, accessible, and will help you start coming up with better content ideas tomorrow.
Sounds good to me.
That's another great kudo for you and indicative of what the book is all about. So let's talk about when the book's coming out. I'm seeing on your website, I think it says the book comes out February 24th, 2020. Is that still in the works?
That's right. Yeah. So, one of the wonders of, the internet and our Amazon overlords is that that's when we're trying to get the book launched. But as you may have heard some other creators share, in recent months, you submit these things and you hope and pray that they're accepted quickly and that they launch as expected. So assuming that all of our algorithmic overlords are on our side, the book will be available for purchase and delivery on February 24th. It will be available for pre-order a few weeks before then. Again, as soon as it's available, if you guys are engaging with me on social, believe me, you will hear about it.
Oh, I have no doubt. And so it will be available on Amazon.
It will. It will be available on barnesandnoble.com as well. And a few other places. There's going to be an ebook. So if you're a Kindle, ebook kind of person, you should be able to get it that way as well.
Well, I'm going to tell you to get the physical version because you're going to want to highlight this thing and keep it on your desk as a constant reference book. I still have, and well, I'm an old guy, so I like me some books, but I still have the books I refer to a lot right near my desk, so I can always grab them and just kind of refresh my mind very quickly. And this is one of those books. Is it coming out only in softcover or you got some hardcover as well?
It's going to be in softcover. I think that makes it a little more portable, a little easier as a reference book. The other thing, and I don't think this information is anywhere else, so it may only be for people who are listening here are going to get the first scoop. We are also working on a companion workbook. So there's going to be, you talked about, highlighting and flagging the pages. That was a lot of the feedback that we got from our early readers as well. It's like, I want to take action. I want to make this happen. How do I do that other than having scraps of paper and a notebook everywhere? So we are in the process of building a companion workbook that release date TBD, but hopefully not too long after the book comes out, you can get a workbook version that lets you sort of fill in the blanks, do this as you read.
I think that is such an excellent strategy because a lot of people would say, and we're going to create a Google Sheet that you'll be able to use or whatever. That does not have the same impact as having your fingers on tactile paper, engaging your brain through your hands. I mean, studies have shown, and don't ask me to cite who said this or what study says this, but I truly believe it. Students who take handwritten notes in classes retain information better because they're physiologically engaged with the concepts, they're intellectually engaged with the concepts, and they're mutually multiplying in terms of their power and energy. Same thing for, again, let's put our Iron Foundry marketing hat on and say, if you're an Iron Foundry marketer and you've got this workbook, you fill it out with, I'm sure there are going to be questions in there about what's the most important stuff about your company, your brand, where does it come from? Kind of the facts, the meat that you then can craft into individual content dishes because you always got to go back to the protein that is your company. Otherwise, you're just chasing the ephemeral, faddish garbage out there. Again, one of the tenets, say it along with me and get your shot glasses ready. You've got to know who you are so you can be it. And that's the only way that you can truly build a completely true, completely you nonfiction brand in real life, on social media, and wherever you go, meet people, speak, present, etc.
Hey, nonfiction branders, did you know I wrote a book? Well, I did, and it's called Rotoma, the ROI of social media top of mind. I wrote it with my colleague Spencer X. Smith, and it's all about Rotoma, an acronym that means Return on Top of Mind Awareness. Best-selling author and NYU Stern School of Business professor Scott Galloway called it a book that starches the fluff from social media and helps managers allocate capital and find the unicorn among unicorns, ROI. And Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs, Ann Handley said, this isn't just a practical way to think about the return on social media, it's also a spot-on, accurate way to reframe your social efforts. Check out all the 5-star reviews on Amazon by searching Rotoma, ROTOMA. Pick up your copy today and start building your personal, professional, and small business brand the Rotoma way.
So this has been quite the trek to get this book done. Very exciting. I mean,
the journey.
Yeah. So what was I'm going to ask you 2 questions. You can guess what the second one is based on my first question. What was the easiest thing about this book?
The easiest thing about this book was knowing that it was going to help people really pushed me to keep going. So, I mean, and maybe this is getting to the second part of your question, but there were some days when I was, 7.5 months pregnant and it was the middle of the summer. And I was thinking the last thing I want to do in the entire world is go walk to my office, which is, a few blocks from my house, and sit there and write for hours and hours or review, what I've already written. That was really tough, some days. But knowing that the early readers and the people who were helping to develop the book along with me, getting the feedback and hearing how much it was helping people, I think, thank goodness for that. Because I think if I didn't have that little carrot at the end saying like, this is going to help people if only you can finish it. People are going to learn from this if only you could finish it. That encouragement, I think, made it worth it.
Okay, well, you guessed what my second question was. What's the hardest part? And that is just getting the pig done.
Yeah, writing a book is I'm so glad I've done it. I've always wanted to do it. I've been a writer all my life. It is a bit of a rite of passage, and it feels wonderful to be able to sort of put that feather in my cap and say I managed to get through it. But much like the way you hear people describe having run a marathon, it's like, yes, I ran a marathon, but like, it was not super fun in the moment. Like, it's a lot of work ahead of time. It's a lot of sweat and tears and stress and planning. And goodness, all of that is not the part that's enjoyable. It's the getting over the finish line and celebrating with your medal. And I'm glad that I'm at that point now.
Well, I can tell you one of the most amazing days in your life, of course, the birth of your daughter it's
up there. Yeah.
And that will always transcend everything. But the day that box arrives at your house and you open it up very carefully, and then you see that cover on multiple copies of that thing, it's going to be like, oh, especially for someone who fancies themselves a writer. I mean, It literally is. Have you seen the movie Little Women?
No, not yet.
Okay,
it's on my list.
I am not going to spoil that then. I will say more or less the last scene. Well, the last scene having to do with the writer part of her. Holy cow. It's like, totally get that. But yeah, once that book comes out, you're going to be so proud of it. And I expect to see photos of you on Instagram with that thing. And also, knock on wood, what is Social Media Marketing World is March 1st to the 3rd?
1st to 3rd, I believe. And I will be there. That's sort of like the official launch of the book. I know it'll be available for order on Amazon, the week before, but that's going to be its big debut. So I'll have some copies with me and hopefully we can, I would love to take a selfie with you with both of our books.
Yeah. Well, I'll certainly have copies of mine as well. So actually we will make that happen because again, this is how quickly it can happen. When you decide to build your personal brand, when you decide to step out of the shadows and into your own personal spotlight, you can go from, and again, look at me, I now have a beard and most of it is Santa Claus gray or white. I spent my entire professional career behind the scenes in the creative department, performing as a highly performing engine, if you will. Here's the thing, engines, when they want to get a new one, they unbolt the old one, they get a new one in and say goodbye. When I decided to stop doing that, I went from what am I going to do to I'm going to write a book with my friend Spencer X. Smith. We get it done in, I think, a total of 5 months. I then go to Social Media Marketing World for the first time in that following February in March of 2018. I had listened to Grant Baldwin's podcast, which, again, if you're into speaking or want to create a business as a speaker, you got to listen to the Speaker Lab podcast with Grant Baldwin. Melanie is a frequent co-host, at least on some of the ones I've heard. And all of a sudden, I'm able to meet her at Social Media Marketing World and give her a copy of the book that I cited her in because I heard the podcast that Grant did. So boom, podcast. That's a social media thing that you can do for free. Well, $5 a month to host a podcast someplace. A book, you can create it and have it created by Amazon CreateSpace and self-publish yourself, which might get you the attention of people who actually publish stuff. But here's the thing. Once you do it yourself, that level of control is so cool that if you're like me, you want to retain that coolness. But then I'm able to see her at Social Media Marketing World, give her a copy and say, thank you so much for inspiring me even though you don't know who the heck I am.
That's the best feeling. I'm hoping that I can experience some of that in the in the weeks and months to come as people get their hands on the book. I would love to hear that it's helping people come up with content ideas, because that's why we all create, right? That's why we create, why we put information out in the world, why we're posting wherever you're posting, writing your blog, whatever you're doing, right? You want to connect with someone. You want to have an impact. You want to help change someone's mind and give them an idea. So I think if we can do that, then that's a pretty good feeling to have.
So step out of the shadows and into your own spotlight the way Melanie has with her brand new book. And its title is, again,
The Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas.
And that's coming out
February 24th, 2020.
So look for it starting then. And also watch for content on Nonfiction Brand Versity, the free Facebook group, as I go to social media marketing world. And you can count on the fact we're going to be flacking your book in a big way in the group. And I also want to introduce you to other fantastic people who go to that really high quality event. Because again, if you want to be like people, find them, meet them, engage with them, and do what they're doing. Take a look at Melanie. If between these two episodes, you've heard her say, I started out in one area. I had to calibrate a little bit, make it a little bit wider. But guess what? That's what everybody's doing all the time. So you are not alone. And if you have to create content on a regular basis, you're going to want to pick up a copy of The Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas from the lovely and talented Melanie Deziel. That's Deziel. And again, your website where people can hook up with you is storyfuel.co.
That's us.
All right. That's it. I'm going to see you in San Diego in March, and I can't wait to see that.
Right.
And also, we are going to take that picture of us proudly holding our baby books. And I look forward to having you on the podcast again very soon, because, sorry, but you're in my orbit. I'm in your orbit. And we're just going to keep that orbit going, because once you find the stars you like to hang with, oh my God, I'm going really deep on this astronomy metaphor. But once you find the stars you want to hang with, get in a constellation with them. Oh man, I'm really butchering the astronomy on this. Sorry, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. For the Nonfiction Brand Podcast, I'm DP Knudten, and she is
Melanie Deziel.
And I'll be talking to you guys next time. Bye-bye.